there's polling that we are now seeing. These are exit polls from the midterms as they start to get digested that suggest that Donald Trump's base has not been the white working class as we were led to believe, but rather, and look, this is not that much different from George Bush, right? And the white working class evangelicals, and that they come out regardless of Mike Pence, that Mike Pence is not actually providing a bump. There's something about Donald Trump that activates some slice of the identity of these white evangelicals. Now, we should say that there has been substantial research that suggests that for a significant percentage, I don't know if it's 50% or what, of self-identified white evangelicals, they don't really go to church that much.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's simply more of a cultural identification for them. And I think, that's why, there's all this surprise about, how could all these white evangelicals support someone who is clearly less than pious? Well, they may not be so pious themselves. That may be more of a of a coat that they wear. I'm not saying they're disingenuous. It's just a cultural identification. It's much of a club as it is, sort of a deeply held religious practice. Maybe I don't know, but that's what the research has said. And there may be other factors about Donald Trump. And I would imagine for the more pious, the opportunity to have a Republican who will reliably, and Trump has proven this, appoint revanchist and fundamentalist friendly judges on the Supreme Court and frankly throughout the federal judiciary. I think he's proven that he's promises made, promises kept in that regard. So it is maybe not a surprise that they may not care about the fact that Donald Trump seems to be all around him, sort of bathed in a certain amount of criminality. This week we saw a healthy dose of that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. And I mean, I think it's interesting that you point out the fact that 50%, or, some studies have shown as much as 50% of self-identified evangelicals don't really go to church very much, and that this is more of a cultural ID. And I think that's true. It's also true and important to point out that there are a lot of these people. It's not like, that number is just some small faction of the right in this country. It's a big faction. It's large. And that's why that accounts for Trump's support, which is far from being a majority. But probably, of the 40% of the public that supports him, probably at least 30% of those are those evangelicals. Maybe another 10% for a variety of other reasons are with him. But, those people, now whether or not they are truly, religious, that's just their identification. That's how they see themselves. They vote Republican. They consider themselves conservatives. And whatever Trump is doing, maybe most importantly of all, is that he is out there fighting the battle against the liberals, which is, one of their main motivating factors in life. So, that I think that this does make sense. But what it also does say is that this is not an economic argument. This is about something else. And it's important to keep that in mind. And also the fact that Trump's problem with women extends beyond this suburban, group of sort of, you think of sort of middle class, upper middle class, maybe upscale Republican women who are saying they're not going to vote for him, and in many cases they're saying they're done with the Republican Party altogether. I think that's a significant thing, and what it says about Pence, of course, is very important because he brings nothing to the table for any of those people, for the white working class non-evangelical women, the suburban Republican women. those Pence is not helpful there. So they think maybe, Nikki Haley might be someone who could maybe bring some inroads in there. Whether she wants to do it, I don't know. That's another thing. But the idea that they're thinking about this, I think, is probably important. And, you look at where Trump is on the criminality scale. Anyone who has considered themselves a law and order Republican really needs to start doing a serious gut check, because the evidence is piling up.
I mean, there's been so. I feel like it's overwhelming at this point. I mean, never mind. Questions of collusion. I think that remains to be seen, at least to some extent, or I should say how far it goes, I should say, right? And what the level of awareness was. But in terms of just sheer criminality, both in the context of getting elected and beforehand, I mean, that seems to be beyond dispute.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And of course, we all sort of saw that and knew it. There was plenty of evidence out there about what kind of business Trump had run and the fact that he was running a con game. I mean, look at Trump University. I mean, there was a lot of that stuff out. And now we're seeing even more evidence of some major, major issues having to do with, theoretically and potentially betraying the country. There's the evidence is definitely piling up on this. Now, the conservatives have an interesting way of always having it both ways. I mean, they're law and order conservatives, and then they also have this anti-government side, which they can deploy in this case in defense of Trump, right? The government, the strong arm of the government is coming down on our poor president. They're conspiring against him. Look at, big government is terrible. And their people are flexible enough. I mean, I guess flexible is one way, hypocritical is another way of talking about it, that they'll buy that, to a certain extent. But there exists a group in America of sort of, people who, I don't know, military types, cop types, whatever, that at some point or another, I would have thought that this overarching criminality on the part of the president, obvious. And now he's even admitting it, just saying it wasn't any big deal. They're just little crimes. What did he call them? Just peanuts. Not a big deal, just peanuts. And the fact that none of these alleged straight arrows, with the exception maybe of Bob Mueller, I mean, I don't know, but, maybe he's still on that track. But all these supposed straight arrow guys who were just, not just the facts, ma'am, I just care about the Constitution and the rule of law. Where are they? I mean, you just don't see them. There are a few never-Trumpers out there yammering on TV, but for the most part, you just don't see any movement. You don't see it in the polls. You don't see anything. And so, I think in some ways I'm I'm maybe more depressed about that than I should be. I mean, I know what the right wing is like, but I always thought there might be some limit on some, maybe 10% of these people that
Heather,
they would be sane.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you were wrong.
Yes.
We got to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. If you'll join me in the next hour, Heather, we've got a lot more to talk about. I'm Sam Seder. This is Ring of Fire Radio.